All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to look at how our modern digital habits are just silently stealing our absolute most valuable resource. Look, we all know we spend way too much time online, right? But what we usually miss is the invisible, highly engineered machinery operating right behind the glass of our screens. So today, we're taking a deep, scientific look at the modern attention economy.
You probably don't realize it, but the average person actually touches their phone about 2,600 times a day. And following the global pandemic, research shows average screen time has absolutely skyrocketed to around 7 hours a day. 7 hours! That's not just, passing the time. That is actively altering how our brains function, how we pursue our goals, and honestly, how we experience reality.
This completely reframes how we look at our devices. Computer scientist Newport points out that we often view social media as this fundamental, essential 21st century technology that we literally have to use. But the reality is actually quite different. Tech pioneer Jaron Lanier hit the nail on the head. These aren't fundamental utilities. They are carefully engineered slot machines. They offer you these shiny little treats designed by literal attention engineers who are borrowing principles straight out of Las Vegas casinos.
So, today we're breaking down exactly how this attention heist works. We'll be looking at the attention trap, the science of addiction, the procrastination puzzle, the hidden cognitive costs, and finally, the escape plan. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The attention trap. The evolution of the feed. To really wrap our heads around the scope of the problem, we first have to understand how social media radically changed its entire business model. The goal completely shifted from connecting people to converting human attention into massive corporate revenue.
The shift here is just stark. We basically moved from a follow model, where you actually controlled your own corner of the internet, to a completely algorithmic feed. Think about it. Originally, you subscribed to creators and friends you actually wanted to see. But then, TikTok came along and innovated. They completely ditched the social graph and built a feed from scratch based purely on what their algorithm predicted would keep you scrolling the absolute longest. And well, every other major platform completely panicked and copied them, replacing your conscious choices with a machine optimized solely for maximizing your time spent.
And to hold that attention, these tech companies started exploiting core human vulnerabilities. Take the infinite scroll, for example. Before it existed, websites actually had pages with natural stopping points. The creator of the infinite scroll, Raskin, later expressed deep regret about this. He admitted that removing those natural breaks proved how a seemingly small, simple interface update could actually be used against humanity on a global scale.
Moving on to Section 2, the science of addiction. The really crucial point here is understanding the underlying biological machinery that these platforms are literally hacking into. We often brush off social media as just harmless entertainment, but neurologically speaking, it triggers the exact same pathways as highly addictive substances.
It all comes down to the dopamine trap. Now, contrary to popular belief, dopamine isn't really just about experiencing pleasure, it's heavily about motivation and anticipating a reward. So, when you see a notification, your brain anticipates validation and bam, dopamine spikes. But once you actually check it, your brain reduces the dopamine transmission and it actually drops below your normal everyday baseline.
And that creates what scientists call a chronic dopamine deficit state, which essentially traps you on the hedonic treadmill. It's like getting a piece of chocolate every day eventually loses its thrill, right? Well, getting 100 likes suddenly isn't enough anymore either. You constantly require new, more outrageous, and greater digital stimuli just to feel normal.
Now, for absolutely anything to become an addiction, it requires two primary factors: ease of access and speedy rewards. This explains perfectly why you get hopelessly addicted to scrolling infinite short-form videos where you get a quick laugh every 20 seconds, but you never get addicted to, say, reading a complex book or starting a new business. The platforms have basically zeroed out the friction and maximized the speed of the reward. It's an unbeatable combo.
This brings us to Section 3, the procrastination puzzle. This biological hacking perfectly explains why we so easily just put off our actual real-world goals in favor of digital distractions.
Have you ever noticed that we literally never procrastinate on watching a funny video? We only ever procrastinate on things that require real, physical, mental, or emotional effort. When you delay a super important task to just scroll online, it creates this deep cognitive dissonance. It's a mental conflict between the goals you really want to achieve and the actions you're currently taking, and that conflict fills you with this underlying, lingering sense of anxiety and guilt.
Science shows us that procrastination is a really complex battle. We procrastinate because of expectancy theory, where we basically lack the confidence that we'll actually succeed. We face loss aversion, where the intense fear of failing just paralyzes us. And we suffer from hyperbolic discounting, which is a fancy way of saying our brain has an intense biological craving for immediate gratification, like a digital like, over a massive long-term reward like a career promotion.
So when researchers combine all of these factors, they get the temporal motivation theory. This unified formula proves that without strict immediate deadlines and a very clear personal connection to the task at hand, your brain is automatically going to default to the path of least resistance. It will always choose the brightly colored slot machine right there in your pocket.
Let's look at Section 4, the hidden cognitive costs. Okay, so what actually happens to our brains and our lives when we surrender to this digital slot machine every single day? Because, spoiler alert, it's a lot worse than just losing a few hours of productivity.
Get this, Meta actually admitted in a recent FTC trial that only 7% of time spent on Instagram is actually used viewing content from friends. That is wild. The original promise of social media, to connect us with loved ones, is basically completely gone. It's been replaced by a hyper-commodified stream of viral clickbait entirely designed to keep your eyes glued to the screen.
Exposing ourselves to these intermittent rewards throughout all our waking hours completely short-circuits our brain wiring. And research points to some pretty severe consequences here. A permanent reduction in your capacity to concentrate, intense political radicalization through algorithmically sealed echo chambers, deep social insecurity, and a massive explosion of anxiety-related disorders that are constantly fueled by this pervasive background hum of digital stress.
Psychological studies show a really fascinating contrast here. People who consciously avoid short-form reels actually exhibit a naturally higher tolerance for depth and show much stronger prefrontal cortex engagement. They're remarkably comfortable with silence, they experience life directly without an algorithmic filter, and they possess a mental ownership over their finite time that is becoming genuinely rare in our modern world. Which leads us to our final part, Section 5, the escape plan. Look, if you are tired of this heist, and if you want that mental ownership back, it is time to build an escape route. It is time to reclaim your mental real estate and become fiercely intentional about your attention.
The very first step is realizing what actually matters. Cal Newport argues perfectly that the 21st century economy does not reward easy-to-replicate behaviors like scrolling or having a really nicely curated profile. The market abundantly rewards deep work. That is the intense, concentrated, distraction-free effort required to build skills and actually produce outcomes that are genuinely rare and valuable.
So, to protect your ability to do this deep work, you have to beat the algorithm by attacking its very foundation. You must artificially eliminate that ease of access. You need to add severe friction to your bad habits. If your addiction is mild, start by turning off all non-essential notifications. If it's worse, delete the apps off your phone entirely and force yourself to log in through a private browser every single time. Make it incredibly, painfully annoying to be distracted.
And whenever you feel that strong pull to procrastinate on your real life, remember the temporal theory of regret. Science proves that we will always be far more devastated in the long run by the dreams we procrastinated on, the businesses we never started, the art we never made, than the times we actually took a risk and failed.
It's really time to stop outsourcing your mind to an algorithm that only views you as a data point. Reclaim your focus, because ultimately, your attention is a strictly finite resource. It is literally the currency of your life. So I'm going to leave you with this final, vital question. Who are you going to give it to today?